Hi, so I'm gonna go ahead and do an example here. So I'm going to just go over a brief variance from my normal introduction. I do have a certificate of completion to show that I'm certified and competent in the field of hypnosis. It's from Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. And let's see. So I'm just going to briefly explain the methods and patterns that can be noticed in my videos of hypnotic writing impairment. A complete inability to properly articulate and write a complete sentence adequately the first time. Um, a limited capacity of only being able to articulate 3 to 5 words at one time while writing. The hypnosis would inhibit my ability to articulate the next 3 to 5 word sentence portion until I wrote down the previous 3 to 5 word sentence portions. This was done so that I couldn't determine if the sentence or sentence fragment was properly articulated before writing it down, because then I could be forced to write improperly articulated sentences and be forced to rewrite the sentences several times before being able to properly articulate the sentence. So basically, I'd only be able to, articulate 3 to 5 words at one time, but I'd have to write down those 3 to 5 words before I would be able to articulate the rest of the sentence. And this was used to make me and force me to rewrite sentences several times. An inability to form logical sentences by combining the individual sentence portions I am able to articulate. The hypnotic writing impairment would typically require me to rewrite sentences between 4 to 12 times on average, with excessive pauses and breaks caused by hypnotic memory repression, resulting in a single sentence requiring between 30 minutes to an hour and a half to write and articulate on average. The hypnotic writing impairment would also involve slowing down the rate I'm able to write, approximately 5 to 10 times slower than normal. Hypnotized to feel back pain and tension mostly on the right side of my back as a method of distracting my conscious attention away from the rate of my pencil strokes so that I wouldn't notice how much the hypnosis was inhibiting my ability to write. The back pain and tension was mostly on the right side of my back because I write with my right hand. So, moving on from that, I should be able to articulate complete sentences. I'm explaining that is how the hypnosis has been inhibiting my ability to write and forcing me to rewrite 6 to 12 times. I graduated high school a year early, started college a year early, over a 3.0 GPA in both. No problems. So, I mean, no difficulty completing tasks in a reasonable amount of time. No difficulty articulating complete sentences before writing it down. No short-term memory problems. No difficulty no pattern of rewriting sentences several times to properly articulate a sentence. It's not normal behavior for me. In fact, the communication patterns present in this warning indicate that he is experiencing communication problems. And these were consistent with that of, because it's so the hypnosis is really inhibiting me right now. This is so abusive. This is so abusive. This is so abusive. Because I'm also looking for that other folder that I had the other day with all of this. It was just on the specifying about something called a pattern interrupt to break the pattern. But I just don't know specifically where that's at. It could be in this pile, most likely. There it is. Put at the bottom. Seemed almost as if that was intentional. So 5 minutes into the video now. But as if John Matthew Hurl was experiencing impaired communication abilities. In fact, the communication patterns were present in the warning. Okay, so this is not a difficult thing to do. In fact, the communication patterns indicate he was experiencing. In fact, the communication patterns, like communication impairment. There we go. Present in the warnings. Present in the warning. And so present in the warning. I wrote the word present, but I'm going to articulate the entire sentence first. Present in the warning indicate a communication impairment. Indicate he was in fact the communication patterns present in the warning and I could say are consistent with an impaired ability to communicate. In fact, the communication patterns present in the warning indicate he was experiencing an impaired communication ability or an inability to adequately communicate. That I explain in detail in part 3 of this video. Okay. Number 2. Caused by hypnosis, by the way. So let's see. So reference number 2, page 6. You need to shelter me, and I can protect you from hell. Earthquakes will happen, and you will die if you don't. The second quote in the letter is referencing death. Is extremely abnormal and unusual. Is extremely abnormal and unusual for a situation pertaining to is extremely abnormal and unusual for the situation or for allegations of threatening death. For the alleged circumstances. And again, there is the hypnosis inhibiting my ability to articulate a complete sentence for the alleged. Like, this is the type of thing that led to me doing a handwriting analysis on this guy. And something dirty that they did too. This is actually a principle in graphology that I actually learned in my hypnosis course. But I was taught to do this specifically. Because it's called a felon's clause, and it's present in like 90% of inmates in the state penitentiary. And it is basically like the downward pen strokes, descending pen or pencil strokes from the letters Y, G, I think Q as well, and J. So we'll have like an acute angle that comes up, almost actually like a curve as well, from the acute angle. So it protrudes down, descends, and protrudes down from the baseline that you write on a lined piece of paper, and it's a characteristic of deceit and deception. And I was actually hypnotized to change that specifically in my handwriting, because before, my handwriting did not contain it, and basically to throw off anybody that would try to do a graphology on my handwriting. I mean, you know, like, they specifically taught me very specific traits and characteristics that I actually explain in other videos. So anyways, the second quote referencing death is extremely abnormal and unusual for the alleged circumstances or situation. Because so so there's two things. He literally warns her of something else killing her, other than him. You know, because his name's not Earthquakes. Will happen if you you will die if you don't. And unless he's implying that, you know, like he has magical powers or something along those lines, which would be how some people would probably actually interpret that as a delusion. You know, like but just understanding the situation, I can you know, very well, especially with I can very well differentiate, but this one actually had a very specific post-hypnotic suggestion correlated with it as well. But the second quote referencing death is extremely abnormal and unusual for the alleged situation. Because the statement contradicts threatening death or harm in any way, and like he offers to protect her and warns her that she could die from earthquakes instead of you know, him. The second quote referencing death is extremely abnormal and unusual for the alleged situation. So because the statement so anyone notice how I'm having difficulty articulating a sentence? And also, if you noticed here, how because I am actually thinking about rewriting this, that's the problem. That's the problem. The second quote referencing death is extremely abnormal and unusual for the alleged situation. Instead, I wanted to write something like the second quote referencing death completely contradicts. And see, that's where I start experiencing difficulty articulating the rest of the sentence. So then I would write down what I came up with and articulated before I would be able to try to articulate the rest of the sentence. And that's how it would, the hypnosis would inhibit my ability to articulate a complete sentence and make me rewrite it 6 to 12 times, taking 30 minutes to an hour and a half just to write a single sentence. That's all. That's what's happened. This is the example of that. Articulate. Do it. Like, hypnosis is inhibiting me. So, you know, like, I'm speaking just fine about how the hypnosis is inhibiting me, right? Exposing that as well simultaneously. This is the pattern. That, you know, I haven't had any difficulties or problems with until I got hypnotized. Until I started trying to write down everything to make videos that the hypnosis was inhibiting me from being able to say. That's what the entire YouTube channel is about. Is this. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on. The second quote referencing death is extremely abnormal and unusual for the alleged situation. The quote being, "You need to shelter me and I can protect you from hell. Earthquakes will happen. You will die if you don't." He offers to protect her, and he threatens that something else is going to harm her or endangering her. Or I can say for allegations of threatening death. Uh, um, because in the statement he offers to protect her and um, directly states that earthquakes will happen. You will die if you don't. Um, the second quote referencing death is extremely abnormal and unusual. Or I could put extremely suspicious. This is ridiculous. Like I want to point out, I really don't like the simple aspect that I am being okay. I can speak and I can write at the same time. The hypnosis is inhibiting me a lot, and that's one of the things that I've specified multiple times throughout my videos, that the hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to multitask and write. Let's see, warnings. Okay, so let me just write this down. The first quote from the letters. Referencing death. Is written in the context that he is warning her about something. and that if she doesn't listen, she is going to die. Hold on a second. Ow. Huh. Um. Well, I mean, first of all, like the warning doesn't pertain to him. The warning he tells her, isn't warning her about what he is going to do or can do, which is typical in death threats. He tells her isn't warning her about what he is going to do or what he can do. And this is where so this is like an example too, because I'm like rewriting it. I'm able to articulate it in a different way. Like what is expected in death threats. Which would be necessary to classify it as a death threat. Uh, contains no threats of death. And contains no implication that he is intending to harm her in any way under any circumstances. Which would be necessary to threaten, which would be necessary in an actual death threat. So what if I take out that word and, or any other necessary information to classify the warning as a death threat? Or any other context necessary to consider the statement a threat of death. Or any other context necessary to be able to consider the to be able to or any other context necessary to be able to indicate the statement is threatening death. So that he is threatening death. I mean, like, just because he says, seriously, you will, if you don't take it seriously, you will die. Um, I mean, you know, that death threat or a warning of death. And I might want to include the word direct. Is intending. There we go. And then I'm actually going to just switch the words. He is directly. There we go. Okay. Okay. In fact, the communication patterns present in the warning indicate he was experiencing okay, I'm resisting post-traumatic suggestion, so great. In fact, I communicate. Okay, so I need to word this now. Force it. Force it. Force it. I'm going to force it to happen. In fact, the communication patterns present in the warning. So The warning indicates he is experiencing an impaired ability to communicate. Consistent. The specific context in the warning is consistent is actually consistent okay. Why am I experiencing profound difficulty right now? The specific context in the warning is actually consistent with an impaired communication ability with a communication impairment or an impaired ability to communicate. With a communication impairment the specific context in the warning is actually consistent with a communication impairment. The specific context in the warning is actually consistent with a communication impairment. That would likely be caused by hypnosis. Most likely be caused by hypnosis. Or I'm just going to say caused by hypnosis, because it's specific with that type of impairment, actually. And I forgot to say raise his suspicions, but whatever. Well, I mean, I had that repressed from my memory specifically, actually. It's actually consistent with a communication impairment that is actually consistent. Write it. I just had it repressed from my memory. Caused by hypnosis, there. That I explain in detail. In part 3 of this video. Two. The second quote. The second quote from the letters referencing death. Contradict threats of death directly contradict threats of death. The second quote from the letters referencing death is, oh wait, let me finish our sentence real quick. Sorry about that. The second quote from the letter is referencing death. Contradict, threats of death. The second quote from the letter is referencing death. Directly contradict. Hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to write. Hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to write. Directly contradict death threats. Directly contradicts threatening death or death threats. Threatening death. Okay, so I noticed that articulate the sentence. The second quote from the letter is referencing death directly contradicts death threats. Or okay, so the hypnosis wants is I'm resisting the post-hypnotic suggestion to impulsively write it. Directly contradicts death threats or the notion that he is, notion the right word, that's a word that I don't use very often, but I think in this context it's probably better wording and phrasing than the word idea. Kind of like opinion, isn't it? You can set, oh yeah, directly contradicts the notion that he is intentionally threatening to kill her. Because he is offering to protect her. And directly stating that earthquakes would be the cause of her death, not him. Okay. Let me think. So I could also include that he asked her to shelter him. Okay, hold on a second.